I'm Ryan Church, and I'm the founder and CEO of BiomeRenewables. Biome is a renewable energy startup based here in Toronto, and we are developing the power cone technology for wind, and the power cone's an aerodynamic add-on for wind turbines. I became an entrepreneur because I just wanted to do what I love every day, and knew that that would be a challenging process when starting out. It's always hard to start your own venture, but at the end of the day, I decided to become an entrepreneur because I just wanted to do what I loved and get paid doing that. I just sort of made a decision one day that this is what I was going to do, and yeah, I went after it. So Bioneer is just a combination of pioneer and biology. So I'm a biological pioneer. So what I am interested in is a mixture of design, engineering, and biology, and combining those disciplines into biomimicry, which is what I practice. You can't really get a degree in biomimicry, and so it's a multidisciplinary adventure that you're on all the time. You're exploring different attributes and aspects of nature, and you're translating those into solving problems in technology. So I'm sort of a pioneer in that sense, and I'm more of an explorer, I would say, is another way to say that. So I'm constantly exploring, I'm innovating, and I'm tinkering at the nexus of those three disciplines. My background is in design and biology. I used to do stem cell research and cancer research, and was going down a path of being a medical doctor, and pivoted away from that when I realized that research was more of my interest, and more research in the side of technology as opposed to necessarily medicine per se. So, but the background that I have has me in good stead to practice biomimicry. And do what I do, and so I paired that with a design degree and a design-oriented MBA. So I've got some business background, and all of that comes together to enable me to be an entrepreneur, which is what I love to do. This was probably about 5 years ago. My family has a cottage out in BC, and we have a maple tree that was growing beside a deck of ours, and I was sitting out on the deck one day, and I saw a maple seed fall to the ground, or onto the deck rather, and I'd seen it fall many times before, and I'm sure all of you who are watching have seen a maple seed fall, and you may have been interested in that. And a lot of us just trod on them on the sidewalk and don't think anything of it. But the maple seed is a very complex structure. It's a biological rotor, and it achieves maximum efficiency, which is an interesting thing in aerodynamics. So it achieves something called the Betz limit. I'm not going to go too much into that, but it basically is maximally efficient at producing lift given its size. And when I looked at it closer, you look at the aerodynamics, you look at the geometry of what's going on with a maple seed, there were some very interesting things that was happening there that the wind industry hadn't yet thought of or applied, in some interesting physics that was going on there. So the concept was to solve a problem in wind by looking at this maple seed that was falling. And lo and behold, that's the inspiration for the power cone. Power cone has these kind of swooped back blades, and the geometry of that actually mimics the maple seed, which of course it follows at some angle to the ground, and that's actually one of the big keys in unlocking the mystery of the maple seed. And I'll move it closer. That's a power cone.
Okay.
And I'll show you a side angle there as well. So the way that it swoops back is basically, you can think of it like 3 maple seeds glued together at the center. The problem that we were actually solving is right in the middle of the rotor. So in this area, the flow actually gets sucked into the middle of the turbine. And that was a problem called root leakage, which was the problem we were trying to solve. And the idea was to put a device there that could be really efficient at extracting power and also guiding that flow onto the blade. And so the power cone sort of evolved. I made a wind tunnel and in my living
Oh,
room, and yeah, and yeah, my mom at the time was very, very pleased with that. So I made a wind tunnel in my living room, and I tested out various prototypes. Probably went through about 100 or so, and I just made them out of plasticine, something very quick and easy that you can mold, and put it onto a model that had a voltmeter hooked up to it, and I had a fan at the other end, and I was just testing basically changes in volts and amps and current, and looking at what was more efficient, what wasn't, and eventually we landed on this shape here. After a lot of R&D, we did a lot of CFD, which is called computational fluid dynamics. Basically, we just modeled this in the computer and tested it a bunch of times, and yeah, I ended up with this shape. If there's something you want to go after, it's unlikely that you are going to have every skill set to do that. So finding people who can help you along the way and building out that team is a very important process. So even though I wanted to, design a wind turbine component, and I know I'm not an engineer, that didn't stop me because I knew I at least had one part of it, and I just had to find all of the other pieces to the puzzle to make that happen. You don't necessarily have to be a jack of all trades, but you do have to be a master of some of them. So you have to be able to bring certain skill sets to the table, and then fill out the balance of your team and your other co-founders with the other skill sets to make it happen. So yeah, not necessarily being able to do everything shouldn't stop you at all. It should just drive you to find the right people and the right skill sets to match. Basically, I'd come back from the summer, and I had done this wind tunnel testing when I built the thing. And I knew I had something. So I was playing around with different business models, and my prof, who's Stephen Davies, was teaching business model innovation at OCAD, and we were playing around with different business models, and he's like, well, what is this thing anyway? And it was a power cone, I think that's what I'm going to call it. I don't know. Basically, it's like this maple seed thing, and it goes in here, but look, it does this, and I tested it. And he got really intrigued and interested in that, and he told me at the time that he wanted to do something really big. And he said, this sounds like something that could be really big. Like, how big is the market in this? And I talked to him a little bit more about that, and he said, you know what, I'm in. Why don't we do this together? I'll and he had spent 20 or 30 years in industry for Chartwell and Deloitte and that, and so he had a big skill set that I didn't have, right? He had a lot of experience that I didn't have, and that was like step one of me filling out the team was experience in business. I had none at the time, right? And he had 20 years or 30 years, so yeah. And then from there, I had some other friends who were in sort of design and engineering, and I kind of cobbled together that part of the team. And Brian got some more, finance related people involved, and yeah, and we just grew it from there, basically. COVID is tough for everybody, but I think we've fared better than most. We're lucky. We have a long runway. We have like good cash reserves. So we're fine from that respect. And, the renewable energy industry is going to, I think, explode in the 2020s and 2030s. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that the world can be less reliant on oil. I mean, we saw oil prices go negative recently, which tells you something. And everyone's talking about if we're going to build a new economy, let's build a green economy. They're talking about this in Europe and the UK and a little bit here in Canada as well. So for us, I mean, I think this is just going to kickstart that transition and accelerate it more. So in a post-COVID world is going to be a world of renewable energy. When I was starting my company, I want to tell everybody this as well who's listening. I wanted to start a company that was going to be sustainable and was going to be in an industry that was around for that everybody needed. So I picked energy, and then I picked renewables, and then I picked wind on purpose, because I knew that if I was innovating in that space, there would be customers, there would be demand, and it would be a sustainable company that was going to last, right? So I made those kind of key decisions early on, and then from there decided to focus on tackling the problem, specific problem in wind. I had no wind background, no experience in wind at all, but just decided kind of step 1, 2, 3. This is the industry, and then eventually this is the problem to go after. So that's one way to make sure that the company that you're building will have demand, is just to think about it from a perspective of where is the world going? And the world is going to be a sustainable one, I think, in the next 10, 20 years. And sustainability is going to be at the forefront of everybody's imagination. So, yeah, Cleantech has had sort of an up and down experience, call it from like 2010 through 2015 now, and then 2020. So in 2010, Cleantech was very hot, a lot of investment going into it. A lot of people invested in things that they probably shouldn't have, didn't do the right due diligence. So a lot of people got burned actually in around 2012, 2013. So when I started the company in around 2015, probably wasn't the greatest time to start the company, but I wanted to do this anyway, so I did start it. Getting early investment was difficult, but as we've gotten up to 2020 now, it's been a lot easier. Cleantech has sort of a resurgence within Cleantech now, and I pretty well expect that to continue into the 2020s. So yeah, Cleantech had a rough patch that it went through, but I think it's good now. We're a Cleantech hardware company, and hardware sometimes is the kiss of death for some VCs, and they don't like it for various reasons. It takes a long time and that, but from my point of view, we're building something that's going to last, it's going to be sustainable. So there are hardware Cleantech VCs out there, and some of them have invested in us. So it's not that you can't get investment, it just might not be as hot as AI or some other discipline right now. Absolutely, yeah. If you want to start a company, you should check out, there's a whole bunch of different accelerators that are in the city and in the surrounding region, Kitchener-Waterloo area as well. CDL, Creative Destruction Lab, is a very good one. It is hard to get in, but if you get in, it will accelerate your company for sure. A lot of top names are involved with that. I met Chris Hadfield through CDL as an example. It's the sort of program that will probably push you faster than you are comfortable to go, maybe as an entrepreneur, and that can be a good thing. It can force you to just make decisions and go with it and trust your gut. And that's a very important thing when you're an entrepreneur, is to just trust your gut instinct and not overthink things too much. Yeah, speed to market is a real thing. So. Yeah, so there's CDL, there's Next Canada I was a part of last year. They have a few different ones, and I know you were part of this too. I was a part of something called Next Founders, which was just about founder development. There's other ones called Next 36, which are more about companies. And there's a lot of other ones. There's the Hatchery at U of T. There's Mars Discovery District, which we're also a part of. Mars has a Cleantech sort of division, but they also have other ones for healthcare and IoT and other things if you're interested in starting a company in that. So yeah, I was just check it out. The tech scene in Toronto is second to maybe Silicon Valley, but it's referred to as Silicon Valley North for a reason. So there's a lot going on here. The wind industry went through a boom in Canada, and now it's kind of cooled off a little bit in terms of development of new wind farms. I'm sure that's what the person is asking about. So this is true. Our customer base is the installed capacity. So for us personally, it's not actually that big of a deal. We've got way more than we could ever go after. I mean, in terms of revenue potential, it's like $4 billion in Canada alone. So that's way more than enough to keep us going for a long time, and that's just Canada. So yeah, but the wind industry generally is booming, 17% year-over-year growth, which is an extremely steep growth rate. It is not 17% in Canada at the moment, because we have certain politicians who I think are refusing to look into the future and take a long-term view. There's the whole Alberta kind of Wexit issue. Although I think wind has provided a good opportunity for a lot of oil patch workers who have the skill sets to be wind turbine technicians. And in fact, wind turbine technician is the #1 fastest growing job in North America. I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but yeah, there's I think over 300,000 in the US now, wind turbine techs, and yeah, many thousand in Canada. So for Alberta, I mean, Alberta I think should be viewed as an energy province, not an oil and gas province. They have a huge wind resource, and the southern half of Alberta is actually loaded with wind turbines. And there's different colleges and universities like Lethbridge that are, they have wind turbine tech programs now, and I think they're starting that. So at the political level, yeah, it's a bit of a hot potato, but at the end of the day, I think the price is just going to win out, and the price of wind is so far below oil and gas, it's going to win the day. So yeah, a little bit of obstacles to get through right now, but I think in the long term, yeah, wind will be just fine in Canada. I've got a lot of experience with elevator pitches. Yeah, it's something that you practice almost until you know every word by heart. So, my elevator pitch goes something like, "Hi, I'm Ryan Church. I'm the founder and CEO of BiomeRenewables. We're a Cleantech hardware company here based in Toronto. We're developing the power cone technology, which is an aerodynamic hardware attachment for wind turbines, which improves the annual energy production by up to 10 to 13%. While reducing loads. And we can offer our customer, which is a wind farm owner, an initial rate of return of between 20 and 25%, which is a good 6% above industry norms." That's sort of the elevator pitch to get someone interested in that. And it comes in like 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and it tells you, who you are, what are you doing, who is your customer, what value are you giving that customer, and if possible, what does your product do for the customer? So I try to hit all those things. So for a wind turbine owner who owns a wind farm, this is a aerodynamic enhancement that does 10 to 13% and gives you this return. Boom, that's it. There's a lot of other places you can go once that's been said to, but that's sort of the main points you want to hit. We are working with a wind farm operations and maintenance company, which is working with Tesla. Of course, very sexy name to be involved with. Doing battery packs for wind farms and doing some trials with that. So we are not developing batteries ourselves, of course, but we are in that minutia, in that world of looking at storage and wind. There's some other projects in Europe which are looking at pumped storage. So using excess wind power to pump water basically at a height and then have it run down through a turbine when you need it. So there's a couple of different batteries that the wind industry is looking at, both lithium ion but also like more natural batteries as well. So for Biome, we're primarily in wind. We just did a tidal energy pilot as well. So we're also in tidal. We did a tidal pilot involving the EU. We did it in Ireland last year and tested the power cone with a different geometry, of course. But actually, I think I might have a model here. I should just show you guys what this looks like. So we are also looking at hydro as well, but this would be a power cone for tidal, and you can see it's quite a bit thicker than the other power cone we have for wind because we're dealing with water, so it's more dense. So we put basically one of these onto a tidal turbine and we ran it in Ireland, and it worked very well as well. We got pretty similar results. And then if we're looking at hydro, we put an object like this. So this would be more of a hydro turbine. And again, it's got a thicker time scale element to it, but yeah, that would be more of a hydro turbine. So for us, we're looking at, we deal with fluids generally, right? So all of our tech is applied to wind, tidal, and hydro. In terms of solar, I mean, solar just works well with wind energy. They're usually very complementary because they're usually optimal at different times of the day. So it's usually very windy at night, and it's very windy during the wintertime. And so those are both times and regimes of the year where where solar isn't so prevalent, of course. And so those two really work well on the grid, sort of balance the demand that you need. So yeah, the missing piece is to have storage fill up that and take out all the peaks and troughs that you would see in demand. So yeah, the second the storage comes of age, we'll really have a renaissance. So when I was in university, I did a little bit of everything, and I wouldn't have changed that. At the time, it kind of felt reckless, but it was really just finding out what I liked to do and what I loved to do. And I landed that I really liked biology, and I really liked design. I didn't really know what biomimicry was when I was in university, and I only sort of learned about it after the fact and realized that, oh yeah, that's the name of the thing that I'm actually really interested in. I'll start a startup where we have biomimicry as the core focus. So following what you love, even though there may not be a specific job in mind, the great news is that as an entrepreneur, you can turn anything into your job if you have enough kind of grit and enough imagination to think about how you can turn that into a business. So that's the great thing about entrepreneurship. It's sort of, for me, you feel free when you're an entrepreneur. And it's actually the lowest risk thing that I could have done to know that I would be happy in what I am doing. People think entrepreneurship has a lot of risk to it, and it does to a certain degree. But for me, and I think other entrepreneurs, not becoming an entrepreneur has a higher risk associated with it, because there's only one path, and I know I won't be happy in that path. So there's almost no choice, which means there's almost no risk, which might sound funny, but that's just how I view it. So as long as you have the fortitude to stick with it, because the early days were tough. I won't deny that. They were very tough. Finding financing, getting friends and family to invest in you to start off with, finally getting your first investor and growing the team took some sleepless nights to get it done. But once you're there, it's absolutely worth it. So just stick with it. The biggest thing you can have as an entrepreneur is just grit and determination. Just to try as many things as you can and get as many different experiences as you can. If you haven't landed on it yet, once you find it, you'll know. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. The most critical thing, obviously, is like the financing part of it, like in the money, right? Because if you run out of money, what are you going to do? So yeah, making sure that you are in the early days, like don't buy a gumball machine, don't spend your money on t-shirts. Like don't do that. I didn't spend $10 on a Biome t-shirt until I was 4 years in. Don't waste your money on that type of stuff. That's not what having a startup is all about necessarily. I mean, Silicon Valley might give off that vibe, but that's not what it's really all about. It's the basics. You got to get the basics in place first. So getting your first prototype, getting your first customer, right? And getting out of the valley of death. You've probably heard this phrase a lot. The valley of death kills like 90% of startups, and it's usually financial. Some of it is timing, and the other part of it is team. Those are kind of the three big things that will kill a startup. So if you have the right timing and you've got the right team, don't blow it on t-shirts. Don't blow your financing on t-shirts. Spend it on getting the prototype, getting those first customers, getting to that first revenue. That's key. The phrase, the valley of death, will be thrown around, especially in incubators and places like Mars and CDL and that. And the valley of death is a period in time where you start a company and then you have first revenue. And the period from there to there, however long that is called the valley of death, because during that time, you're just burning capital, trying to get to first revenue. And once you have first revenue, then you try and grow that revenue, try and grow your team, and etc. But getting to that first revenue mark, like actually being able to sell something to somebody, does not happen in 90% of startups, which is a shocking figure. And if you don't make it, then your startup fails. So there is no preset day. When you're an entrepreneur, it's a little bit of everything all the time. It's the spice of life, and that's what I like. There's no 9 to 5. It's all it's not quite 24/7, but it's close to that. So you have to like what you do. But if you're an entrepreneur doing what you love, that shouldn't be too much of a burden. So yeah, my day is a mixture of on the technical side of things, working with the engineers, working with the team, making sure that the project that we're trying to execute is going according to plan. It's perhaps solving nitty-gritty design details, thinking about design intent, talking with the customer, letting them know where everything is at, obviously getting feedback from customers. Then there's like a kind of a finance side of my day where I'm checking in with our CFO, making sure our cash flows are still good, how much is in this bank account and that bank account. Thinking about the next round of fundraising we want to raise. When do we want to raise it? What milestones we want to have achieved in order to raise it? What type of investors are we going to go after? I'm going to build a pitch deck. What's going to be in the pitch deck? How much are we raising? What's the valuation? Those are all questions that I am thinking about and kind of trying to herd in various directions, the best way to put it. And then there's occasionally talking to investors, right? Letting them know how things are going. I put out a quarterly investment letter every quarter, which once you get to a certain round of capital, you should probably be doing. It's a good, prudent thing to do. If you can, I would set up a board just for governance reasons. It's good to have a board. It doesn't have to be a formal board, but there should be some level of oversight. And I lean on my board quite a bit when it comes to regulatory and things that I don't have a lot of experience with, but there's some very experienced people on my board. So I reach out to them as needed, and we're all on the same team trying to achieve the same thing. A lot of people who are on your board are likely lead investors or big investors in your startup. And it usually goes hand in hand. And I wouldn't shy away from that. Having them on your team as a board member is likely a good thing. If they're a good strategic investor and they can help you a lot, then it's best that they're probably on a board and giving you guidance that way. So yeah, sometimes I'm working from home, sometimes I'm working at the office, sometimes I'm at the wind farm site, sometimes I'm at a manufacturer. It really just depends on where you're at in your journey, right? So you're like a chef who's got like 4 or 5 pans on the stove and flipping this and taking this out of the oven and mixing that. So yeah, just depends. So, this is a list page for me. It looks organized. Just kidding, of course. And I've got a couple of these. I've got a couple of these on my desk right now. Here's one, and it's double-sided. Now, that's just how my brain works. So obviously, you can take notes in a book, and I've got various kind of proper books where I've got, I do keep sort of a journal, make sure everything's straight. But I'm always making lists because as emails come in, it's just a rotating to-do list that I have on the go. Never do I have everything ticked off. Just the way I work, I try and keep my inbox as clean as possible. So, I might have 40 unread emails. I know there's some people who have like 1,000 unread emails. I couldn't work that way, but that's just me. So I try and stay on top of my email, but yeah, don't let it run your life. There's a story I like to tell actually to students and to other MBAs, and it actually comes from Napoleon Bonaparte. So in Paris, and when he was conquering all over Europe, he had this oak desk that he used, and he had a stack of paper and different reports would come in from all over the continent. And at the end of the day, if he hadn't dealt with something, it all went in the garbage. And he started with a fresh slate every day, so his desk was clear. And then if it was important enough, it would come back. And then he would answer it. So I don't quite do that, but in terms of my email, I tend to just, if it's not important and you didn't get to it, it will come back if it really is important enough. There's a lot of things that aren't important that can distract you and make you less efficient. So in terms of being efficient as an entrepreneur, which you do have to be, because time is the enemy when you're in the valley of death, when you're out of it a little bit. Yeah, being organized, keeping track of things, and but don't let unimportant things take your time. Just do what you know you can do without getting too stressed out about it. There's no sense in you worrying. I mean, with BiomeRenewables, there was a point in time where I was like, I'm going to save the world. And now I'm like, I'm not going to save the world, but I am going to try and make wind turbines as efficient as possible so that they can displace coal and oil as fast as possible. That is all that I am going to try and do. And if I can do even a part of that, then that will have been a success for me. We are all in this together, so don't feel like you have to bite off everything all at once. There's little daily things that I do just from a sustainability point of view, like, you know, here in our house, we don't eat a lot of meat, a lot of red meat. That's kind of an easy one. You know, we don't own a car. I've got a bike, and if I really have to go somewhere, I just car share or rent a car. So, yeah, makes life simpler too. Important thing, I mean, in your daily life, you're making all these decisions all the time, and so if every time you go to make a decision, like, is that sustainable? Like, you'd go insane. So for me, it's just about getting some habits in place. Like when I go grocery shopping, I just take some bags with me, and it's just become a habit now. I don't take the bag because mentally I'm like, that's the most sustainable thing to do. For me, it's just like, this is just how I go grocery shopping now. I just have some bags with me. And so if you can make, you know, a couple of thoughts and a couple of choices here and there, you know, once a week or whatever, you'll eventually build up a life that's actually quite sustainable, without, you know, overloading yourself. That would probably be my biggest advice, because, yeah, you can't do it alone, and don't think you have to do it alone. My best advice on this would be to reach out to Mars Discovery District. However you can go there, try and go there in person, or meet with somebody, or you can email. They have just a huge amount of portfolio companies who are always looking for, you know, engaging and interested young people to either volunteer, or maybe it's a paid summer internship, whatever it might be, and whatever you're interested in. I would go there and basically just say, I'm available, and be hungry about it, and yeah, something will come. So there's a lot of opportunity out there.